this to be somebody who probably needs no introduction for many of you, because if you're like me, you listen to him every weekday on the radio on AM 1280, our co-sponsor, on his daily program. I say, and even though this might get Dennis Prager on his case, I think he's the smartest guy in talk radio. And that's why I tune in every morning. We are thrilled to have Hugh Hewitt, award-winning commentator, broadcaster, moderator, join us as our moderator for our debate this evening on history and Parental afternoon.
Thank you, Joe, very much. Thanks all of you for coming, and those members of the media who are here, welcome as well. Let's get right to the main event. The rules are very simple. I want to review. Please don't applaud or boo or hiss during the debate. Moderators are limited to 30-second questions. They will rearrange the order so that there is no fixed order, no anticipatory rotation. Candidates have 75 seconds to respond. Each candidate will have the opportunity in each round to respond to a question or a similar question that is posed. And there is no right of response. So if another candidate mentions someone, they have to wait till the round comes back. Then if they still remember why they're upset with whatever was said, they can then go back to that. So with that, and without further ado, let's get to the main event. Let me introduce our first Senator Michelle Benson. Good evening, Senator. So who's closest to us? Paul Gazelka, Senator. Former State Senator Dr. Scott Jensen. Mayor Mike Murphy. And Dr. Neil Shah. Thank you all for being here tonight. Let's begin right away. And I'm going to start with you, Senator Benson, since you're closest. My first question will go to each of you. Why are you best among these five to take on and defeat Governor Wall?
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. I'm Michelle Benson. I'm principal. I'm prepared, and I'm electable. You can check my voting record. I have the most conservative voting record of anyone on this stage. I'm prepared. I have taken on the toughest task in the Minnesota Senate as chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, the Miniature Oversight Committee, the Office of the Legislative Auditor. My resume is long, and I'm prepared to be the chief executive of this state. And I'm electable. I have deep connections in the agricultural community, and I raised my family in the suburbs, and the votes that we need to bring in, I have listened to for more than a decade. I share the experiences with voters all over this state. I can go get them and bring our message of hope and prosperity to everybody from every corner of the state, so we can have a more free and more prosperous Minnesota.
Paul Gazelka. I've had the privilege of governing as the Senate Majority Leader for the last 5 years against a Democrat House and a Democrat Governor. I have governing experience. I've gone back head-to-head against 2 Democrat governors. Every time they wanted to raise taxes and do a grand progressive agenda, every time we stopped them with a 1-vote majority. So I know how to govern, which is part of what you need in the governor candidate that you're going to pick. And secondly, I know how to win. In the Senate under my leadership, we won back-to-back majorities for the first time ever. I recruited 2 Democrat senators from the Iron Range to join us, and now Tom Bach on the Iron Range is going to run as a Republican, and he's promoting me on the range. So I'm going to do really well on the range, which is not normally one of our strongholds. I'm going to do well with the police because public safety is the #1 issue, and I've been endorsed by the Highway Patrol already for governor. The Chiefs and the MPPOA have both given me their Legislator of the Year award. I worked out with blue-collar unions and built relationships with them, which is really important. And I've spent the last 5 years working in Minneapolis and St. Paul, building relationships with minority communities that absolutely absolutely want to come our way. We just need to show them the path. So I know how to govern, and I know how to win. Thank you.
Dr. Jensen.
Thank you. Leadership matters. Leadership matters. I think we all know that. For the last 9 months, our campaign has been leading. We led the charge against the death certificate request whereby we were being massaged and doctors were asked to put down COVID-19 even when it wasn't a COVID-19 death. I led the charge against Tim Walz with his masking and his model, his false models, and also the mandates. I even led the charge against President Biden on September 9th when he tried to use a press conference to do an end run around Congress. I have led the charge saying that Jan Malcolm should not be leading the Department of Health. And I have also led recently asking Tim Walz why he has taken down so many of the press conference videos that have been on social media. I'm leading now. If you look at the recent poll from KSTP, you'll see that in terms of favorability ratings, I have the highest favorability rating of any announced candidate for governor, including Tim Walz, in both the conservative group as well as the independent group. And I will lead as governor. In the first 100 days, we will focus entirely on passing stand your ground, constitutional carry, voter ID, school choice, and we must rewrite the emergency powers so never again do we live under emperor's rule for 22 months. Leadership matters, and the only way you lead is to have the tough, hard, courageous conversations, and I'm willing to do that over and over again. Thank you.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for being here, everybody, tonight. My name is Mike Murphy, running for governor. I've done some things as mayor already to prove myself as an effective leader that can do the hard stuff that a lot of people aren't willing to do. Number one is I restricted my emergency powers as mayor so I couldn't be a Tim Walz and lead like a tyrant in my city during this pandemic. And that's important. I've also passed Second Amendment sanctuary resolution in my city protecting your Second Amendment rights in Lexington. As the next governor of this great state, we're going to have constitutional carry in this state, and we're going to have a stand your ground law, and we're also going to be a Second Amendment sanctuary city. But more importantly, coming up soon here, which I've had to push to the new year, is we're going to fight against these vaccine mandates that are coming down the pipeline, and businesses coercing all of you to either get the shot or lose your job. And we're going to pass a health freedom sanctuary resolution built in the city of Lexington, and we're going to get that done in the state of Minnesota as well. But prior to that, I went to school for law enforcement, and I wanted to be a cop, and I was for a very short period of time. I worked in law enforcement, but unfortunately I had a back injury, so I went into small business. Then in 2016, I ran for council as a write-in, won as a write-in candidate, proving that I could win elections too as well, even those hard write-ins. So we can get stuff done. And regarding that KSTP poll, Doc, I'm glad you brought that up, but overall it shows that you're losing the Walls by 1 point, and I'm beating them by 1 more than you, so I'm getting that point. If Minnesota is ready for a political outsider, I'm that political outsider that's going to be the wokeness and the radical left.
Thank you, Mayor.
Dr. Shah.
My name is Dr. Shah. I'm a father, a husband, a physician, a small business owner, and the son of Indian immigrants who came here 50 years ago in search of a better life. And I've had enough. And I think you have too. I've had enough of the violence in our streets, of innocent children being killed, of cars getting taken away from their owners in broad daylight, of career criminals operating with impunity. I've had enough of the indoctrination in our schools. My parents came here not because of a guarantee, but because of a promise that if they had talent and worked hard, the greatest country that people have ever created would allow them to achieve their dreams. They did that. But now that dream's on life support and it's under attack from the radical left that believes that America is fundamentally flawed, that this great experiment in self-governance is not worth sustaining or improving. I reject that. I reject the notion that we are not the greatest country that's ever lived. And I reject the notion that we need to settle for another career politician to send to St. Paul to capitulate to Tim Walz and the radical left. I'm running to save Minnesota from the career political class, Tim Walz, and the radical left. And with your help and and God willing, we will succeed. Thank you.
All of you can applause out. Let's applause more questions. Second round, I'll begin with you, Dr. Jensen. Before we look forward, let's look back to the election of 2020. In your opinion, did President Biden win a constitutional majority in the Electoral College? If yes, how definitive is your conclusion? And if no, would you please explain which states you think are in dispute and why? And I'll begin with you, Dr. Jensen.
I can't know what I don't know, and I think that we have to take that attitude towards 2020. I spoke with people who were boots on the ground in Arizona, in Maricopa County, and they shared with me that the good news of their analysis was that only 282 dead people voted. And I said, that's the good news, and they said, yes. And I said, what's the bad news? They said, 9,000 more mail-in ballots were returned than were sent out. I don't think there's any question that we've had enough shenanigans that we should want to do something about our election integrity. Which states cross the line? Which states hit a certain threshold? I can't know that. But I do know that there were abuses with vouching, harvesting ballots, the absentee ballot system, the mail-in ballots. I do know that there were dead people that voted. And I know that because some of my patients told me where when a loved one had died and they got a ballot in the mail. So I can't tell you which state hit a threshold that could have flipped. But I can tell you that more than 50% of the states in this union do have some form of voter ID. And 47 states out of 50 have provisional ballots. We've got to quit quibbling about this. We had Terry McAuliffe screaming at the Democratic National Convention in 2004. They stole the last election, referring to George W. Bush. Let's just stop the bickering and get photo ID and fix the problem.
Dr. Shah, I want to repeat it so people understand it. Did President Biden win the constitutional majority in the Electoral College? If yes, how definitive is your conclusion? And if no, please explain which states you think are in dispute and why.
Thank you. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, and I can't tell you the last time Chicago's had a perfectly free and fair election. So this is not a new problem. It is not unique to 2020. In Minnesota, which is the only state that really we should be concerned about here, the legislature, as in most states, makes the rules. But the governor, in his dictatorial tyranny, long and aided and abetted by the Secretary of State, decided they would change the rules. They would go around the legislature and weaken what defenses we did have against voter integrity. Do I think that played a role? How could it not have? We need voter ID, we need provisional balloting. We know what the policy solution is, but we also cannot have the Secretary of State and the governor running roughshod over the black letter law that says that the legislature controls laws around voting. We need to make the case, and it shouldn't be controversial. Voter ID occurs in such right-wing countries as Iceland, Germany, and France. Americans of all colors have said overwhelmingly that they favor voter ID. And in fact, gives us an opportunity to enfranchise more voters who may not be able to come on election day. So the idea itself isn't controversial, and it should never be. We need a clear communicator who can explain why voter ID is what we need and why we all need to have faith in our election system.
Mayor Murphy.
Great question, thanks. And I have a big favor of all of you to ask, and that is don't let me vote Democrat when I die, please. I would appreciate that. And yeah, I do believe you. I do believe there was voter fraud at a massive scale across this country. Can I pinpoint the evidence down and everything? No, absolutely not. I'm not privy to the scheme and the inside of where it happened. But we did know that it did occur here during the primary in Ilhan Omar's district, and Project Veritas exposed that with ballot harvesting. But the bigger question is what are we going to do about it? And like to echo everybody else, is yes, we need provisional ballots, and we need to change same-day registration. We need to purge voter rolls, and we have to have forensic audits pre and post, and we have to have that set up in the great state of Minnesota. And we do need voter ID, but we have to enforce the voting laws that we have already and prosecute the people that are committing the fraud. That's the problem that we're not doing here in this state. People are getting picked out and saying you committed this crime, but nobody's getting in trouble with it. And that's what we're lacking here in society in this great state. And, more importantly, we need to have trust in our elections, and we need people who feel disenfranchised to show up in 2022, just like they did in Virginia, where they took the great state back with Glenn Youngkin, and Winston Sears was elected. And we can do that right here in Minnesota. We can take the House back, the governor back, the Secretary of State back, so we don't have these problems again, the Attorney General back again, and of course, all of the other seats that are open as well. We have to have better sheriffs. All 87 sheriffs are open. We have great sheriffs that are running. So let's get that done, ladies and gentlemen.
Senator Gazelka, again, did President Biden win the Electoral College? If yes, how definitive is your conclusion? And if no, please explain which states you think are in dispute and why.
That was the question. So what I would say is that I don't think the election was fair, but I do think we have the results that we have, and the Electoral College is the way that we determine the election. Each state does their own deal. I'm not a big fan of how that all played out. I focused on Minnesota. My one responsibility was to make sure the Senate won, and we won back-to-back majorities. But do we need to do election reforms? Absolutely. The first thing we absolutely need to do is have photo ID for voting. We passed it in the Senate. Again, House Democrats do not want to do that. So as governor, I will make sure that we get photo ID for voting. That's a huge thing that everybody wants, that is reasonable. In addition, one of the things that we need to do, we should create a pot of money that is ongoing so that there's more election audits on a regular basis so everyone knows that the election was fair. I'm going to ask the legislative branch to do that. Elections are really, really important, and people need to know that they're fair. What is the thing that we can do right now? Because with a Democrat House and a Democrat governor, they do not want to change anything. They had 20,000 election judges. We have 3,000 election judges, and a bunch of those the Secretary of State weeded out. So we need to get all of us engaged to get more election judges everywhere so that we can hold them accountable. If we have election judges in every one of the precincts, it's a lot more difficult to cheat. So do we need election reform? Absolutely we do. Do I think everything's fair? No, I don't. But we have to win anyway.
Senator Benson.
Thank you. What about the judge who agreed to the consent decree? The legislature had made changes to accommodate COVID and voting. And the judge let Steve Simon agree with a bunch of his friends to override the will of the legislature. So we need judges who understand their job is to interpret law, not make law. We need a Secretary of State who's actually interested in legal votes being counted. Two things that you can help with through your ability to vote. And then we need a legislature who's going to pass voter ID, which we've put forward many, many times. Provisional ballots, so that those people who maybe didn't get registered, maybe are a little confused on election day, but they have a right to cast a legal ballot. Their ballot is counted just like every other legal vote. Our job is to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat, and every legal vote get counted. So let's do that. And I'm going to ask you to take your role seriously. Be an election judge. Be a poll watcher. And if you have someone under guardianship or in a nursing home or assisted living facility, make sure you're the one assisting them with the ballot. The more we watch, the less they cheat. So you be the watchers. That is something you can do independent of everything else, and I will champion easy to vote, hard to cheat.
Senator Benson, a follow-up though. Did President Biden win?
He was certified by Congress as having won the Electoral College.
Thank you. John.
Thank you, Hugh. Many pro-life voters are excited about the prospect of the U.S. Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade decision being overturned, possibly even in the coming year. No guarantee of that. But when that happens, as it seems that both sides of the pro-life issue seem to expect, when that happens, it's going to throw regulation of abortion back to the states where it was prior to the Roe v. Wade decision. How would you use your power as governor to protect the right to life at all stages from conception to natural death in Minnesota? Oh, starting with Dr. Shah.
to fight back against that? What have we done to move the football down the field in terms of protecting life from conception through natural death? Life begins at conception. This is a biological fact. Open embryology textbook, like I did in medical school, and there it is. Life begins. I became a doctor to save lives, not end them. And yet, in budget after budget, under the leadership of Senator Paul Gazelka, we continue to fund Planned Parenthood. We all know how Planned Parenthood makes their money. Is this the leadership we want? Is this moving the football down the field? I don't think so. And you'll hear complaining and whining about the judiciary, which apparently got their law degrees out of the Cracker Jack box and decided that life doesn't begin at conception. Doe versus Gomez, whine. Your job in the legislature is not to do the Supreme Court's job for them. We need jurists who understand basic biological facts and can evenly apply the law. Once the Supreme Court has struck down one of the worst rulings they have ever made, up there with Plessy and Ferguson and Korematsu and Dred Scott, it will be in our hands to move that football down the field, get jurists into the Supreme Court that understand the law and basic biology and will protect life from conception forward.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. Mayor Murphy, please.
I'm glad we're getting all the good ones out of the way right away. But every life, every human life is precious, and I could never put myself or even begin to put myself in the position of being a female having to make that terrible choice. And what we need to do in the state is not only just pass laws that help limit and restrict abortions, but we have to change the stigmatism in our society as a general to say that it's not okay to do this, that every life is precious, every human being is precious, because we don't know how many babies have been killed over the years. That could have been the next Mozart or the next Beethoven or the next Elon Musk or even Albert Einstein. But we're going to have to go after Doe versus Gomez, and we're going to have to change that in the court system as well. And that's why we need a strong legislative body that is going to make that decision. We're going to need a governor that's going to say, no, I'm not going to sign that bill until we have this discussion and have this topic about abortion. And we have to have pain-capable birth bills passed. We have to have a heartbeat bill passed. There are a lot of different things that we need to do in this state. I don't want to limit every woman's right to choose, and I'm all for medical freedom, but I also stand for the health of the mother and the baby, and that's extremely important. And we can get that done here in Minnesota, but it's going to be a war against the radical left, and it's going to be a war against the media because it's going to say a Republican governor is trying to take your rights away. But that's not the truth. We need to save every life, and that's what we need to do in this state.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. Dr. Jensen, please.
Times I've had the chance to see the miracle of birth and deliver a child. It's been the privilege of a lifetime. But I think in the context of delivering babies, you come away with a sense of this is a miracle, and how can we do what we've done? 10,000 abortions have occurred in the country. We can do so much better. I remember when we were having a press conference in the Senate to demonstrate our support for pro-life in 2019, and Senator Gazelka asked me to speak on behalf of the Senate, and I did. And I said, and we were talking specifically about late third trimester abortions and Hillary Clinton's position. And I called out Hillary Clinton and said, this is horrific. How can you think of this? A baby has to move a few more inches and through a flap of tissue, and it's a loved life. And you're saying that you can change your mind. I appreciated Senator Gazelka saying, Scott, would you do that? I've never done an abortion. I've never seen an abortion. When I was a resident, I did rotations at hospitals and clinics all over. One of my assignments was occasionally to go to a Planned Parenthood clinic and do pap smears and take care of bladder infections. But that doesn't make my position on, if you will, pro-life any weaker. I was shocked to get phone calls from delegates around Minnesota saying that Senator Gazelka was calling them and saying that I worked at Planned Parenthood and therefore I wouldn't be a good pro-life person. I've never had anything other than 100% rating from MCCL, and I'm the only candidate who can say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. Senator Benson, please.
I have a 100% rating from MCCL and a 0% rating from Planned Parenthood. I have carried more pro-life legislation than anyone else in the legislature. And how did I choose that legislation? If it passed a test in a federal district court so that we could challenge Doe v. Gomez. I carried the bill to defund Planned Parenthood and got a letter that said, you do realize this violates Doe v. Gomez. So I know where the fight needs to be. I absolutely have a plan for judges, for legislation. We take the strongest federally constitutionally approved language and we bring that to Minnesota so that we have a strong path and a strong position to defeat Doe v. Gomez. But why do I fight for life? Because as a mom, I know the preciousness of life. I've made my first pro-life speech at the age of 16. I volunteered at Birthright and sat across from women who were afraid of what a baby was going to do in their life. You can be fully pro-life and be compassionate to women facing challenges, which is why when Tim Walz wanted to cut positive alternatives, I demanded an increase every single year.
Thank you. Senator Gazelka.
I wasn't sure what was going to happen here, but I'm 100% pro-life. MC Sale has given me that rating. If you don't know, that's important to figure out who actually does ratings on different things. And we have fought for pro-life ever since I've been a legislator. And I will say, before I was even a legislator, my wife and I, monthly, all the way from then through now, every month we give money to Lakes Area Pregnancy Support, which helps women bring their child to term. And if they want to adopt, fine. If they need resources to bring that child and raise that child up, that's what we did. And so I live and breathe this. This is important, I think, to all of us. But as we're moving forward, what would I do as governor? Well, first of all, I would lead by example. It's important that what you believe comes out of you, that you're not afraid to talk about it, whether it's your faith, what you believe about family, what you believe about life. That's something I would do. Number two, we have to pick good judges because Doe versus Gomez is Roe v. Wade in Minnesota. And Roe v. Wade was what the judges at the national level do. What are we going to do about the judges at the state level? Well, the governor appoints those judges, so that's a very critical thing that we do. And in addition to that, we work on many, many issues. We did Positive Alternative Act, which was helping women bring their baby to term. We did Parents' Right to Know, which notified the parent when their child was pregnant. We had a bill that you had to show what was in the womb. And we've done many. We passed a bill to end taxpayer abortion. Go on.
Thank you. Senator Gazelka, I'll begin with this for you. CBS Channel 4 in the Twin Cities ran a story on the 13th highlighting spiking crime concern that shocked this out-of-stater in Edina, St. Louis Park, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, the suburbs, basically. How big of a problem is this, or is that media sensationalism?
It's a huge problem that has affected our state, and it is fully Tim Walz and the Democrats' fault, all the way back to the death of George Floyd. The mismanagement of those riots and letting them be lawless everywhere was a big problem. But it's not just there. The district attorneys won't prosecute. If they tell the police if you have a minor violation and you can't pull them over, and if you do, we're not going to prosecute anyway. And then the judges aren't given felonies when they should. Instead, they dumb down the verdict that they give. And so we have this major problem that everywhere the criminal feels like they have the right to do whatever they want. In addition, our leadership in Minneapolis and St. Paul, all Democrat, is basically defunding or dismantling the police so that the numbers of police are way, way down. They're discouraged. We're not giving them the tools. And as governor, I'll make sure that they have the tools they need and they get paid what they need to do to be out in harm's way. And I'll thank them for the work that they do. We need to take our streets back. I mean, it is out of control. And just appreciating the police. I'll just tell you that during the riots, I went into the basement of the Capitol where they were staging, and I thanked every one of them. It felt like a war zone there. And Governor Walz never went down there. So he chose his side. I'm choosing my side. We need to all stand up for the police and thank God that we have them. Give them our support, and let's take our streets back. This is a big problem. We have answers.
Mayor Murphy.
Yeah, it's no big secret. All of a sudden, the Hennepin County prosecutor is waking up and saying, hey, it's happening in Edina and such. I guess we got to do something about the crime problem now. But while children were being murdered on the streets of Minneapolis from machine gun fire and stray bullets, he was nowhere to be found. It's kind of funny how that works out when people in affluent neighborhoods complain about the crime, but when the citizens of this great state in Minneapolis are left abandoned by Tim Walz and Keith Ellison, it's a shame and it's disgraceful. And we got to do something about it, and it starts at the state level. The residents of Minneapolis and St. Paul have been begging Governor Walz to send in the State Patrol or the National Guard if needed. Those calls have gone unanswered. We have to send in a force to take the streets back. We have to have law and order in this state, in this country, to have a civilized society. That is the only way that we can progress forward and get these other agenda items done. Until that happens, people are not going to feel safe to return back to work or get out of their homes and go to the grocery stores. And God, I hope that's not a tornado coming. And then, that's what we have to do. And we have to get these liberal judges and these liberal prosecutors to start doing their damn jobs. And when I'm governor, I will have the ability to remove certain judges, and I will make sure that every one of them that is bad is fired, and they're replaced with originalists or constitutionalists that will actually uphold the rule of law. And also, we have a big empty prison in Appleton, Minnesota that is vacant right now that needs to get filled up with the hardened criminals. Tomorrow, they're going to look at reforming sentencing guidelines in St. Paul for the rest of the state. And that scares me what they have planned for us, and I'm out of time.
In Albert Lee is being taken to court for violating an executive order. But the murders of children in Minneapolis are going unsolved. And now that there's carjackings in Edina, now the left is getting concerned. They are upside down and backwards. They have taken radicalism to a whole new level when it comes to policing. Ilhan Omar proudly proclaimed that we need to dismantle the police department. All over this country, they're talking about defunding the police. Tim Walz stood aside and let that all happen. And now that people are scared, finally, the media is waking up and bringing it to your attention. Ladies and gentlemen, people who aren't safe can't prosper. So we need to support our police, yes, with training, with counseling, making sure they are properly paid. Prosecutors need to be given tools so they stop waiving gun violations. When a criminal commits a felony with a gun, they should get upcharged, not downcharged. And judges have made a habit of coddling criminals, including letting a 365-day sentence release at 89 days, and that person shot up a bar in St. Paul and changed the lives of 14 Minnesotans forever. The left cannot be trusted with your safety. Tim Walz cannot be trusted with your safety. For the sake of your children, for the sake of the economy of this state, and for the sake of our future prosperity, we need to get rid of Tim Walz and the radical left.
Dr. Shah.
There's a pervasive culture of lawlessness in this state, and it gets worse by the day. Yes, we need police officers on the street in adequate numbers. But we need to focus on what our judiciary and our prosecutors are not doing. They are not doing their job, and they need to be called out on that. If you want to be an activist, hand in your robe, hand in your gavel, go pick up a sign. But don't let violent career criminals back out onto our streets to terrorize neighborhoods. Now, all of a sudden, people are talking about it because a bunch of liberals in Edina got their car taken away. How about the kids in North Minneapolis who had their lives taken away? How about them? How about the businesses I used to go to when I used to live in Longfellow that are a pile of ash on the side of the road? How about them? How about people's life savings taken away by malicious prosecution from Keith Ellison simply for keeping your business open? And by the way, Senator Gazelka gave Keith Ellison $8 million more to persecute you. Senator Benson voted right on that bill. Why didn't Senator Gazelka? We need to take our state back, our streets back. We know what the problems are. It starts by saying that if you are a violent criminal, you will be caught, you will be prosecuted, and you will go to jail for a long time. We will hold judges accountable, we will hold prosecutors accountable, we will take our streets back, and we will give you the right, when all that fails, to defend your business, your person, and your family with a firearm if it comes to it.
Dr. Jensen.
Comments made, but I'd like to just use a metaphor. I had a 50-year-old guy in the other day who'd had a heart attack. And he said, Dad nabbit, Doc, how come we weren't able to ward this off? And I said, well, actually, we've been talking about it for the last 10 years. You're 30 pounds overweight, you're still smoking, you don't take care of your cholesterol, and your blood pressure's high. We had all the signs coming down the road. I think we've seen signs before we saw the lady almost get carjacked outside the Byerly's. We saw it in 2018 when both the House and the Senate were Republican. We had a terrific, horrific shooting in Florida, in Parkland. We didn't have a conversation at that time. We neglected to do what citizens across the country were asking us to do. We had thousands of parents come down to the Capitol, and they weren't necessarily asking for gun control. They were asking, is there a way that my children could be safer, that my children won't be caught in some sort of mass school shooting? We've got to do better. Our system is broken. We're not leading the conversation. We should be leading the conversation and saying to people, we're going to have a hearing. I said, I'm going to do the only thing I can to compel a conversation, and said, I'll put my name on a proposal for a month or so to make sure we have a conversation, and we did. And then I took my name off the bill because it wasn't going anywhere, and I put a bill forward, Stand Your Ground. 2 years later, Senator Gazelka realized that I was right, that we needed to have a conversation, so he called for a hearing in Hibbing because he knew, and he said in the Duluth Tribune, we were being hounded by people on all sides of the issue, so we had to have a hearing. We've got to lead the conversation. Otherwise, we're not doing our job.
Senator, Doctor, let me move to Kyle Hooten of Alpha News.
Thank you. Governor Walz's emergency powers have been a hot topic of discussion, to say the least, over the last 18 months, and many, if not all of you, have expressed a desire to drastically reduce governor's emergency powers. But what specifically do you mean by this? What, if any, powers do you think that the governor should have available to them during an emergency? Senator Benson.
Emergency powers needs to be affirmatively voted on by the legislature after 30 days. That is, both bodies. The powers should be limited for that first 30 days so that the rights of individuals do prevail, but the governor can take actions, for example, for flooding, for tornadoes. The governor shutting down churches, as I'm sure many of you are aware, violated the separation of church and state. You absolutely should have had the right to go to your church if your church chose to be open. Your church could have chosen to take safety precautions. That was my position. I had to call the governor's office to make sure that chaplains were allowed to go into churches. He had that much power. I had to make that request. Now, beyond emergency powers, governors have incredible rulemaking power. That's why you have California cars. The legislature needs to pull back emergency powers and rulemaking. And you see all this federal money that's flooding in? Governor gets first crack at that. The legislature can barely get their hands on it. And so we need to limit the governor's ability to spend federal money as well. The governor's powers must be limited. The legislature has a responsibility to be more engaged so that your voice in a crisis, your voice for rulemaking, and your voice for spending matters more.
What, if any, emergency powers do you think should be available to the government, Dr. Shah?
We saw a tyrant take control of our state, close our businesses, pull our kids out of school, force them in masks, and tell you that you couldn't worship when you needed spiritual help the most. That's why I signed the Never Again Pledge, a piece of legislation that would strip those powers away from the executive and return them to you, the people, where they belong. We don't have three co-equal branches. You are the most important, and your representatives are in the legislature. If the legislature, with a 2/3 majority, feels that a state of emergency is warranted, they could choose to do so. But they could never, under the legislation I support, take away rights that should never be up for discussion. Never take away your freedom to defend yourself, or speak your mind, or ask your government for redress of grievances, or worship. Those are sacrosanct, and we must make absolutely sure that they are always protected, even in the worst and most trying of times. The governor still retains the ability to use the National Guard. As the commander-in-chief, that can be done. So if there is civil unrest, we don't need to declare a state of emergency. We can respond to it. But you, the people, need that power back in your hands so a single tyrant can never again take control of this state. And believe me, it will happen again, which is why we need never again legislation passed, and which is why I signed the pledge to do that as my first act in office.
Mayor Murphy. In the opening statements, I did restrict my emergency powers ability because under the Constitution, I had the same authority as the governor in my city, and power scares me. I don't think any elected leader should have that much power to rule over an entire state. 5.5 million people telling you whether you can go to church, whether your kids can go to school, force your kids to wear masks while they're at school, shut your businesses down, say it's okay to go to the world's largest candy shop, but you can't go to your local Ace Hardware store, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely nuts. And we need to have complete overhaul and reform of Section 12 in our emergency powers. The whole point of emergency powers is for the governor to mobilize resources, move some dollars around if need be, call the National Guard, and convene the legislative body which makes your decisions. Those are the people's voice, and Tim Walz took your voice away from you and ruled like a tyrant and a king for around 700 days, and we're still on 15 days to slow the spread with that. It needs to come to an end. So we got to have a complete overhaul and reform. The governor should never be able to shut your businesses down. The governor should never, ever, ever be able to use people like Lisa Hansen as political prisoners and throw her in jail for 90 days because she chose her family over tyranny. She chose putting food on her table over dictatorship, and that can never, ever happen in this great country, in this great state. We have a constitution for a reason, and our elected leaders forgot that it's their rule book and not the people's rule book, and we have to remind them of that again. Senator Gazelka.
Thank you. In Minnesota, emergency powers were abused like we have never seen. It's never happened the way it did happen. And to end emergency powers, it took Democrats in the House agreeing with me to end it. That's why we didn't finish on time, and we went into special session. I would not do a budget unless we ended emergency powers as well. And so we sent forth a bill that said 30 days, that's the most a governor ever gets. I would do 7, I would do less. You don't need them for the things that Tim Walz did them for. And I'll tell you, I mean, he closed schools, he closed churches, he closed businesses, he fined businesses. When the churches wanted it open, they didn't know what to do. I did Zoom meetings with the prominent Catholic leaders and prominent Protestant leaders about how do we open up? How do we strategize against this person that's trying to shut everything down? They eventually said, we're going to open up anyway. That's when he came to the table and said, okay, 250 people in church. And so it's one thing after the other. It destroyed our kids' education. Their mental health is shot, all because one person, Tim Walz, abused emergency powers. But I do want to take the last few seconds to answer Senator Jensen when he talked about the Second Amendment in 2018. He did author 2 anti-Second Amendment bills, one of them universal background checks. It took 8,000 letters from Gun Owners Caucus, shouting matches in our caucus, and finally, at the end of session, with just a few weeks left, he got off the bills. I had a 1-vote majority. I couldn't promise that I was going to be able to protect the Second Amendment. By God's grace, we did.
Dr. Jensen. What, if any, powers do you think that should be available to the governor during an emergency?
Let's go back. The governor had already said he would give up his emergency powers on August 1st. And so we saw legislators running a victory lap because they got him July 1st. But why wasn't the legislature, especially the Republican Senate, voting every special session, because we were having them monthly, to strip those powers away? Why did we not do it on the last day of the regular session in May of 2020, when we had a knockdown, drag-out argument in our caucus? I was one of the few senators who said every time, we have got to do it every time, because if we don't, why did we do it last time? Why might we do it this time? We didn't do it in November as well. This should not be a hard thing. Whoever's elected governor should be able to go to the legislature and say, we need to rebalance, if you will, the balance of power. I want to give up some of my power so that the legislature never again has an end run done around it. So it should be one of the highest priorities. And I think each time a governor tries to re-up a segment of time for emergency powers, it should be harder. It should go to a supermajority, 60%, then 75%. We should make it more and more difficult. And in terms of Senator Gazelka's comments regarding guns, the fact of the matter is, we need to have these discussions. If we don't have these discussions, you have 12 senators that come into the legislature and they've never had a conversation about Second Amendment rights. I got a baptism by fire, grant you that. And it wasn't my most brilliant move, but I did everything I could to compel a conversation. And I think that's on Paul Gazelka, because he should have been leading that conversation so that every legislator would know what a red flag legislation is. And a universal background check means universal, but the bill I signed onto was a limited. And I wanted to look at why are we doing this? Why are prohibited people able to get guns? We needed to fix what we had. We never voted in 4 years on one gun bill. We never had a caucus discussion on how to go forward.
Is that everyone?
That's it.
All right. We have time for one more round before our break. Minutes, please remain in your seats for the 5-minute break, which is a commercial break obliged by the regulatory authorities of radio. I flew in when WCCO was warning this morning that Minnesota might experience its first ever December tornado. President Biden is in Kentucky surveying the massive damage in Kentucky. It also spread across Tennessee, Illinois, Missouri. Do these weather events have anything to do with climate change? And if so, what would you do as governor to address that? Let me begin with Dr. Shah and move down this way.
The climate changes. It's what it does. So the question isn't really whether the climate is changing, okay? It's going to be about a 40-degree swing today. The question is, how do we adapt to that? Do we take away the ability of developing countries to get their people out of poverty, to save lives, to join the world economy? Do we force cars that you may not want to drive onto you? Do we do ridiculous things like subsidize certain industries, which is what the career politicians like to do, instead of green-lighting industries like nuclear, which, if you care about the environment, would actually do something and provide significant amount of cheap power to run the mines in the state, ag in the state, manufacturing in this state? We do none of these things because the reality is the left has no desire to actually do what they say they want to do. They want to control your life. They want to use COVID as a wedge issue to do that. They want to use the climate changing as a wedge issue to do that. We need to do better. We need a diverse energy infrastructure in this state of all types. We need to empower businesses to grow and expand using cheap fuel and energy, particularly nuclear, which is quite clean. And we need to stand up to the radical left agenda coming down from Washington that will force California choices on Minnesotans.
Senator Benson.
We need reliable, resilient, reasonably priced, and respectful of the environment energy. I sat on the Energy Committee for my first 2 years and the Energy and Environment Committee for 6 years after that. I fully support nuclear power. I also support, by the way, that hydroelectricity be counted as renewable energy. I want you to think about that. The left is so afraid that they won't get nuclear, or that they won't get solar and wind subsidies, they won't let hydro be counted as renewable energy. Think about that for energy policy. They're also making sure that the natural gas that you use to heat your home is backup for solar and wind. Now, if you like renewable energy, you should get to choose that as a consumer. But as governor, my responsibility is to make sure that when you turn on your light switch, you have power, and that your home heating bill stays where your family's budget can afford it. It is not my job to let China build new coal-powered plants and then blame you for changes in the climate. Ladies and gentlemen, the left wants to keep you down. They want to raise they want to raise the cost of your electricity, and they want to make you feel bad for living freely in this country while they're letting the rest of the world walk all over us. We're not going to buy that here in Minnesota. We're going to have a resilient electric grid with nuclear, with natural gas, with clean coal from North Dakota. By the way, innovation, not regulation, is doing that in North Dakota. We can do that here in Minnesota.
Okay, did the extreme weather events of last week and perhaps tonight in Iowa and Minnesota have anything to do with climate change? What would you do as governor if they do?
So I don't care whether you believe in climate change or global warming, that's what it was when I was younger, or that God created the earth. I think we all want to take care of the environment. I think that's a good thing that we should do. But when you point to every calamity and say that's climate change, that F5 tornado that went through the east, that F5, First one in 8 years. So what about the last 7 years? Was that climate change? And so I think that's the wrong narrative. I think we all want to take care of the environment, and we want to make sure that we are economically strong and that our national strength remains. And so it should be a combination of all of the above. Nuclear today is far safer. The technology really works. We should be leaning into that in a big way. Whether you're for climate change or not, that's something that we should do. Clean coal. I went out to North Dakota and watched how they mine the coal, and behind them they put back the topsoil, and they're literally planting a crop within a year after that time. They're capturing all the CO2, so where's the pollution? So why do we not look at clean coal and natural gas? And we can use wind and solar and whatever the future technology is. But I'm not against taking care of things, but if we push things so fast that it hurts our economy, like the governor jamming through California clean cars, what a mistake. Electric car mandates, that's forcing people to have that means the people that can't afford the small car, the used car, they're going to have to pay more as a result of that. As governor, I'll stop California electric car mandates. I'll let the economics drive that.
Dr. Jensen.
Arrogance over and over again. We have this notion in America that in order for you to be an expert or to really break something down, you have to have letters behind your name. We have seen it with critical race theory. We've seen it with climate change. We've seen it with hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. We have been told that we can't handle these topics. Well, I'm fine with having a conversation about the environment and water and energy. That's what, frankly, a lot of millennials and Gen Zs want us talking about. They don't want us to be stuck on purity tests. They want to know, what are Republicans going to do to lead on some of these big issues? But we've been stopped from having these kinds of conversations because we have people out there saying, climate change. Climate change isn't going to get us anywhere because it's being perceived as a religion virtually. Let's talk about the real stuff, the things that people talk about. What does it look like to have an incomplete energy grid? What are we going to do in regards to keeping our water supplies clean? This is what we need to do. We need to lead the conversation. There's an arrogance that's taken over our land, and we've seen a bright light shone on it because of the COVID-19. So many of you folks in this room have done such an incredible job of analyzing the data, thinking for yourself, and saying, there's room for differing viewpoints. We don't have to jump from disagreement to contempt. We can be so much better. But when we talk about climate change, that's exactly what's wrong with our legislative system. We're taking something and we're making a lightning rod out of it, and it's not a religion. Let's talk about the real stuff people care about.
Mayor Murphy, you get the last minute and 10 seconds.
Well, I think Greta Thunberg and Al Gore said we're supposed to be dead by now, so I guess we'll see what happens in another 10 years. It's the truth. The woke-topians on the left, they like to make big issues out of little things, and it's very disappointing. I mean, meanwhile, we're strip mining our rainforests. We're using child slave labor in Africa and China to mine precious metals for their car batteries and your cell phone batteries and everything like that. What happened to energy independence in this country? Under President Trump, we were energy independent. First thing Biden did when he came in here is shut down a pipeline, gave one to Russia, took one away from us. And then we had Line 3, where Tim Walz and the radical left, thank God Tim Walz let it happen, but they tried to close that pipeline down as well. We need to get back on track and have nuclear in this country. Start making our products in this country, because then we won't have supply line chain crisis like we're facing right now, or inflation under Biden. But here's the fact. The planet goes through cycles just like your body does. You get sick, you get cold, you have a fever, right? I mean, the planet is a living, breathing organism. That's what we're here for. We have to be good stewards of our environment and take care of our beautiful planet.
Thank you, Mayor. We are going to now begin our 5-minute break for the radio, commercial, and necessities. Candidates will leave the stage. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Please stay in your seats if possible. Thank you.
AM 1280 The Patriot, WWTC, Minneapolis, St. Paul. FM 107.5, K298CO, Minneapolis. 20 years of intelligent talk. Salmon fishing in Alaska, at an amusement park in Green Bay, or taking a stroll through Loring Park. We're where you are. Stream AM 1280 The Patriot at Odyssey.com or with the free Odyssey app.
No one gets out of here alive. It's a dreary idea. If you don't have a plan to take care of your assets and family, they could be put at risk of probate battles, legal fees, or family conflicts. Estate planning can spare your loved ones those ordeals after you're gone. Contact the experienced team of Twin Cities lawyers at Morris Law Group. Morris Law Group will carefully walk you through the estate planning process to ensure your final wishes are carried out. Estate planning is like a jigsaw puzzle. From wills and probate, estate tax and guardianship to conservatorship and power of attorney, Morris Law Group helps you put all the pieces together. No matter your age, no matter the size of your worldly possessions, protecting your family's future is important. Trust the like-minded professionals at Morris Law Group. They'll help you protect your holdings and your family long after you're gone. Morris Law Group, providing peace of mind and family assurance since 1976. Visit them at mlgestateplan.com. That's mlgestateplan.com. Start making your plans today at mlgestateplan.com.
Has your water heater decided to create one of Minnesota's 10,000 lakes in your basement? Have a burst pipe? Dripping faucet? Is your water not soft anymore? Champion Plumbing is a call away. Champion will be there fast in your time of need. They service the entire metro area, and they're taking all the necessary precautions to keep you and your household safe. A champion is someone who goes the extra mile to get the job done, and that's Champion Plumbing. Online at championplumbing.net. When you call, make sure you tell them the Patriot sent you.
There's no use hiding it. I have the handyman skills of a newborn giraffe. No offense to giraffes. Luckily, though, I have a friend who has a guy for everything. Need your house painted, your sink unclogged, your car gasket rotated? He's got a guy for that. When it comes to buying a new home, it's often the same. Your realtor or a friend will often have a mortgage contact they work with. I guess what we're asking is to give us the chance to be your guy or gal for 2 reasons. We're committed to the Patriot. We chose this station specifically because of our core beliefs. Secondly, we have a direct lender advantage. Our mortgage team is an arm of a bigger company who is a direct lender, which means our company gets to use its own money and make its own decisions within its own walls. There's no middleman. For you, this often allows us to get you a better rate, saving you monthly and lifelong money on that brand new home.
We are United Faith Mortgage.
United Mortgage Corp, Melville, New York. NMLS number 1330. Ryan Vrick, NMLS number 65233.
Donate to the Salvation Army now, and your gift will be matched up to $1 million. Your help will provide double the amount of food, shelter, and care for local families. Give generously at a red kettle or online at salvationarmynorth.org.
Too long have conservative voices been silenced by the left when it comes to important conversations about energy. The Minnesota Conservative Energy Forum stands strong with other conservative leaders that are fighting for our energy security. Renewable energy will help strengthen our energy grids and our independence by generating more energy here at home. America should be self-reliant when it comes to energy. Clean energy made at home is the answer for a stronger grid and a more competitive, more secure Minnesota. At the Minnesota Conservative Energy Forum, they believe an all-of-the-above energy approach is the right way to lower prices for consumers, strengthen our energy grids, and support our national security interests. Follow them on Twitter at MN Energy Forum and on Facebook at Minnesota CEF. The Minnesota Conservative Energy
Thank you, everyone.
Forum
If you
is a
could return to your
501c3
seats.
Organization. To make a tax-deductible donation,
And if we
please
can have the
visit
candidates return, that would be great,
mncef.com.
too.
That's mncef.com. Paid for
Time
by
is of the
Minnesota
essence.
Conservative Energy Forum.
Soaking up the sun in Fiji.
As we're preparing to begin part 2, if we can have everyone sit down, please. I would like to ask everyone to know that you need to get, if you wish to participate in the straw poll, and we would like you all to participate in the straw poll, John's staff will be outside with the Q code that you will need to participate in the straw poll following the event. It will close immediately after the event. So if you haven't got one of these, please do get it. We have due voter integrity, so we're going to trust you all to get one vote. In the second half of this debate, the questions will run John, Kyle, and myself. John, Kyle, and myself. Welcome back, candidates. I also want to recognize the loss of your father, Senator. I didn't know about that, and so I very much appreciate your making the debate tonight with that loss. Our sympathies. John.
Thank you. We will start with Dr. Jensen on this. Pandemic-related school policies and concerns about what's being taught in public schools have driven many parents to seek alternatives to public schools for their children's education, including charter schools, private schools, and homeschooling. How would your administration encourage and facilitate school choice to ensure that all students have access to a quality education consistent with parents' values.
We have got to blow this thing open. Enough is enough. K through 12 has been failing. We are no longer leading the pack. We gave one of the biggest chunks of money to K through 12 this last session than we have in decades. That sounds to me like a reward for a job well done, and the fact of the matter is there's not a well job done that should be rewarded. We need more homeschooling. We need more private school. We are standing in an auditorium of a place that has led the charge. We need more and more of this. What we need to do is make sure that parents have the ability to direct the money. We need to fund kids, not broken institutions. Parents know best how their kids will learn. Not all kids learn the same way. But we need to do it carefully, because the last thing we want to do is give government the chance to put their fingers into places where they shouldn't be. So we want private schools to be able to remain autonomous. But we can do that. We got to focus on a foundational education. And quite frankly, private schools are leading the way. Homeschoolers are leading the way. We need to have those dollars go to the parents, so that if the parents want to homeschool maybe from 10 in the morning till 12:30, and then together form a science co-op, so their kids on Monday, Wednesday, Friday are going to some place where their minds are stimulated and they're doing experiments and they want to dream dreams and they leave. This is where we need to go. K through 12 is failing, and we've got to fix it. We've got to fix it with big, bold ideas. And if you want to know where those big, bold ideas are going to come from, they're going to come from parents. I've been all over the state meeting with parent groups, and I thank my Lord above that they have been engaged. Thank you, Mama Bears and Papa Bears. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Murphy, how would your administration encourage and facilitate school choice to ensure that all students have access to a quality education consistent with parents' values?
I'm proud of the parents that have taken their kids out of public school and went into private school. Resistance is the best way to change a broken system. And private school and homeschooling is the best way to do that. But the fact of the matter is we have to go after the corrupt teachers union, Education Minnesota, and the Department of Education in the state. Because at the end of the day, until we rein in what those teachers are teaching our kids, nothing is ever going to change. The woke left wants to constantly attack our law enforcement officers, but we have no fight against the bad teachers that are indoctrinating our children with critical race theory and whatever ism that they're going to come out down the road. So that's why I'm a firm believer that we have to rein in teacher tenure and make it easier to remove the bad teachers that are not teaching our children anymore. We have to get back to teaching American exceptionalism in the classroom and the Constitution and civics, because this country is great. If our children and our students don't know what they're fighting for and what this country represents, we have no country left, ladies and gentlemen. It is very easy. Instead of teaching our children what pronoun you are and what gender and what bathroom to use, that needs to come to an end. If you want to learn that stuff, then it can be taught at home. Like I said, parents and families are the best deciders for their children. And our public schools and our K through 12 and our colleges and universities that are using taxpayer-funded dollars should be teaching the basics, and they should be teaching them well, and then it needs to be educational excellence. And we have to get back to that.
Thank you. Senator Benson, how would your administration facilitate school choice to ensure that all students have access to a quality education consistent with parents' values?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm grateful to everyone who, as I raised my children, helped me understand that parents are the primary educators of their children. COVID shutdowns opened the eyes of parents in a way that had never been done before. And you know what Minnesota parents want? They want ABCs and not CRT. Absolutely. They want to be in charge of their child's education. And that means money follows the child, so that parents and teachers can partner. Because if you're not cut out for homeschooling, and I wasn't, frankly, cut out for homeschooling, you want to choose the people who teach your children, who partner with you. And for our public school system, we're going to have high standards with no excuses, because we're in the bottom 5 of minority reading scores, but the top 5 of taxes. That tells you it's not a money problem, it's a systems and standards problem. We need to raise our standards in Minnesota so that every child prospers and lives to their God-given potential. And for those of you who are worried about government money interfering with homeschooling and private schools, absolutely. So maybe we do it through the tax code so that we're not interfering with those institutions that are working so well with that homeschooling that parents treasure so much. But let's remember, early childhood and our college programs take government money and don't interfere. We can do that for E12 as well.
Thank you. Dr. Shah.
As Dr. Jensen stated, we continue to shovel increasing amounts of money at a failing public school system. And by we, I mean Senator Gazelka. Senator Gazelka, why do you continue to give people money, people that hate us, that want to destroy our country and indoctrinate our kids into racism? Why do we give them more money year after year and get nothing in return? Where are educational savings accounts? Where are they? Where's school choice? Where is that football going? Who's moving it down the field? What parents learned during this pandemic is that these schools are centers of woke indoctrination. And many parents do not have the financial means to pay twice for a fake education and then a real one. We need to give Minnesotans of all means the ability to do so, but we can't do it by playing footsie with the radical left and putting more money in the pockets of the teachers' unions. And for this failed leadership, now Senator Gazelka wants a promotion. He wants to be your governor so that he can continue to give Tim Walz and his masters at the National Federation of Teachers what they want, which is your children's minds. I will put that money back in your pocket. I will give you final say on what your kids are taught. I will not allow CRT to be indoctrinated into our children. I'll ban it as soon as I get into office. We need to take the fight to Tim Walz and the radical left, and as your governor, I will do that. The battleground of our future is in our schools.
Thank you. Senator Gazelka.
My wife and I, we've been married 39 years with 5 kids, and we did homeschool, we did Christian school, and we did public school. And frankly, they all need to be successful, without a doubt. And kids that can't afford, or parents with kids that can't afford to go to Christian school or homeschool, we've got to give them more choices. We passed 3 years ago opportunity scholarships 3 years ago, education savings accounts this year. We had a bunch of minority families come with us at the Capitol demanding the governor give in to that, and he would not. And that's why we need to remove him from office. Number one, it's public safety, but number two, it's education. He refuses to change. The Democrats refuse to change. And they all need to be successful, not just Christian and homeschool, but public school too. So the second thing is, what are we teaching our kids? So when somebody says George Washington, when you ask who's George Washington, and they say, well, wasn't he that slave owner? We failed. We failed our kids. And I'm not afraid to talk about our flaws and what we learned from them, but how about we talk about our triumphs too in school? All the things that Americans have done throughout the generations, so that kids, when they learn that, they know they're citizens of the greatest country in the world. Right now, I don't think they know that. And so we're fighting for the history standards. I got a 2-year delay on the history standards that the governor wants till after this next election. That's why this next election is so important. Governor, House, Senate. That's how we're going to change it.
In 2018, as Minnesota resettled more refugees per capita than any other state in the union, then candidate Jeff Johnson presented an idea to end our participation in a federal program that incentivizes these resettlement efforts. As governor, would you continue our participation in this program, Dr. Jensen?
I would not. I think that we've seen the federal government overstep and overreach. I think that Minnesota needs to be able to make its own decisions. Our Constitution is a masterful instrument, and we need to lock into that more than ever. One of the reasons I so enjoy Rand Paul is he is such a constitutionalist. And I think that that's where we need to go. We need to have a love affair with the Constitution. And that means that the states get to decide unless the Constitution expressly tells the feds that they have that authority. We have seen an overstepping of the bounds. We have, I think, 275 Afghan refugees here. If we hit the target of $31,000, which is the average amount of money Minnesota spends per welfare recipient, if we do that on 275 annually, we're looking at $10 million. While we're seeing that kind of thing happening, we're seeing restaurant owners who tried to pay bills being put in jail. We're seeing people who tear down Christopher Columbus statues let off scot-free. The whole system is upside down. Minnesota should be able to decide for itself, in consultation with the people, but certainly the legislature. What are we going to do in terms of how do we assist?
Minnesota's people are a marvel. It is our greatest resource. We have always been there, and we will be there again. But not when it's crammed down our throat and when we're not prepared. Because if we advertise that we can take you in and then we can't do it, that's worse than saying we have to step aside from that program. So we have to stop.
Senator Gazelka.
So a lot of the refugees that come into a state bypass the governor completely, and they go right to Catholic Charities or Lutheran Social Service, so nobody really even knows. But a governor does have influence. I appreciate what Kristi Noem did in South Dakota. She went to Catholic Charities and Lutheran Social Service and said, I may not be able to control those refugees coming to you, but I do control your licenses. So the governor does have some influence on the process. And we need to close the border, the southern border. What Trump was trying to do was really important. And then once that happens, frankly, we need more legal immigration into our state for the workforce. We have a major workforce shortage right now in Minnesota. So that's one of the things that we need to do. Number two, why are people coming to Minnesota? When refugees come here, there's something called secondary migration, where people from all around the country come here in addition to the refugees that came here. Why? Well, part of it's because our welfare benefits are substantially higher than the surrounding states around us. We should have the similar welfare benefits from all of the states around us. I want to take care of the people that are needy and hurting, but if we give more benefits than everybody else and we are a magnet for people coming here, that's a problem. We want people to come here to be a part of Minnesota, work in Minnesota, have a great life in Minnesota. That's what we should reward.
Murphy. Yes, absolutely. It needs to come to an end. And I've been campaigning on this since day one. Minnesota is no longer living within its means, and this program will eventually bankrupt us with rising healthcare costs and handouts that we're giving to everybody else. The taxpayers can no longer sustain this. This is a very hard truth that everybody needs to realize and come to the fact of. We're just not going to be open for business anymore for this program. We have to regulate the welfare and the handouts that we're giving to our unemployed and the people that are living off the government dole and get people back to work. There's a lot of capable people in this state that need to stop collecting the government check from you hardworking taxpayers. And that is the truth. And I know it's not a popular opinion with the far left, but it's one that they're going to have to come to the conclusion of, because eventually it's going to hit their pocketbook. I'm all for helping people who need help. I'm all for saving people who are coming from war-torn countries that are living under oppressive dictator leadership. It's just, unfortunately, Minnesota has too many refugees. And that is a cold, hard truth and a fact. There are other states in this great nation that can take those refugees in and guide them and make them great Americans and teach them what it's like to live in a country of freedom. But unfortunately, when I'm governor, the doors of Minnesota will be closed for a very long time.
I'm the son of immigrants. So are you. We just came here at different times. But we all came here because we wanted to become a part of the fabric of this great nation. We didn't want to bring ideas that America was not good here. We didn't want to tear it down, take it apart, disassemble it. We want to integrate it and make her better. Those are the kind of immigrants that we need in this country, and you need to stand in line and come in the correct order. I'm not against immigration. I don't think anyone in this room is, but we don't want to bring people in who don't want to integrate, who don't want to join the rest of American society, who don't want to be a part of the American experiment. Those people don't belong in Minnesota. And we cannot be paying for people with social services that keeps them permanently on the government dole. When my parents came here with $5 in their pockets, there was no safety net. And you know what you do when you don't have a safety net? You get a job, and you work hard, and you succeed. It is not our job to make an equitable playing field for everybody. Some people are just going to get a 2-7 offsuit and have to play that hand the best they can. And we should help people become Americans, integrate, be successful, keep their money once they've earned it, once they've been successful in America. We should not be a dumping ground for all of the world's problems. We cannot solve all of them. So as your governor, I will encourage and integrate people into our great state, make them a part of the fabric of our culture, and we will all be better off as a result.
Senator Benson.
We look at what the Hmong community has done. They served in the CIA's secret war, and then they came to Minnesota. They built homes and families and businesses. We should embrace that kind of immigration. But what's been happening more recently The federal government says it's a good idea for Minnesota to have refugees, and Catholic Charities and Lutheran Social Services say it's a good idea for Minnesota to have refugees, and then they leave you holding the bag, paying for the costs, instead of making sure that the immigrants, the refugees they bring in, are employable, engaged, interested in the American dream. So we don't need to shut people out. We just need to make sure that if you're bringing someone in, that they're part of a plan to integrate them into the American dream, as so many immigrants have done before us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are taking people from the southern border who are here illegally. We are taking secondary refugees from other states. We don't have a residency requirement. So I carried a bill that would have required 60 days of living in the state before you could apply for welfare. In the Dayton administration, the standard was if you have the intention to live here. Jeff Hayden and I argued for hours over it. The Walz administration is carrying on the same legacy. I won't.
This question will begin with you, Dr. Jensen. I prepared for this debate with Dwight Rabus, who's been in the state's political life since Al Quie was his boss as a ghostwriter. He said, everyone runs for governor and they have a plan, and paraphrasing Mike Tyson, until they get hit in the face. Ask them what their number one priority will be, that come hell or high water, tornadoes or COVID, they will wake up thinking about and go to bed working on. What is it for you, Dr. Jensen?
We have to trust Minnesotans. They're our greatest resource. I want to make sure I understand your question. Would you just repeat that last bit? You want me to...
Priority as governor from day one that you will never let go of, that you will get done.
Absolutely. We have to trust Minnesotans. Why does Jan Malcolm still have a job? She has demonstrated a willingness to be secretive, to encourage her staff to be more creative in coming up with data that will justify her policies. Over and over again, she has not trusted Minnesotans. Nursing homes. Nursing home facilities and administrators do not feel like they receive support from the Department of Health. Fact of the matter is, they didn't get even a modicum of the kind of support that emergency rooms did. Nursing homes weren't able to keep active COVID out. It was pipelined in. And then nursing homes were faced with locking in patients, locking out families. Jan Malcolm shouldn't have a job. We should have trusted Minnesotans. Lisa Hansen shouldn't be in jail. She was trying to pay her bills. We should trust Minnesotans. Kids shouldn't be locked out of schools. We should trust Minnesotans. People should be able to go to church. We should trust Minnesotans. Especially after the first 2 or 3 weeks when we saw that we had flattened the curve and then we had not overwhelmed the healthcare facilities. But then the goalposts were moved. Minnesotans should feel absolutely abused. This is the sign of an abusive relationship. If you look at what Governor Walz and Jan Malcolm have done to us, never again. My first priority would be trust Minnesotans, trust the farmers, trust the miners, trust the teachers. Teachers go into teaching to touch kids. Trust the nurses, but we have to trust Minnesotans. You don't deserve the treatment you've received.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Shah.
The government in the state is too damn big. And it did not get that way overnight. Over successive administrations, we have increased the size of our budget by billions and billions of dollars. Did Tim Walz greenlight all of those? No. Senator Paul Gazelka helped him out on quite a few. But tens and tens of billions of dollars, we've increased the size of budget. We've increased regulatory agencies reaching into businesses. We've increased government so large that now it runs a $10 billion surplus, and they're trying to confuse on how they're going to spend your money. Give it back. Put it back in your pockets. The taxes in this state are out of control, and they are chasing our tax base out. They are chasing our business creators out. We need to stop the bleeding, or we're going to end up as a failed state like Illinois, New York, or California. As your governor, I would slash regulations. I will eliminate the state income tax. I will make this a place to do business. We are open for business. We have the best trained workforce in the entire middle of the country, and all of the economic refugees from Illinois should be moving their factories here, their businesses here. But that won't happen if we elect someone like Paul Gazelka with an addiction to a tax and spend bureaucracy. that wants to worm its way into your wallet and your business, take your money, and not give it back. Let's give it back.
Senator Gazelka, I'm going to you next.
You thought I was a conservative. No, I want to say, we're going to have a multi-billion-dollar tax cut when I'm governor. That is we have $7.7 billion surplus. That's going to happen. But that's not my number one, and making sure that our kids know our history, which is close to my number one, but that's not our number one. I'll end emergency powers. I'll make sure that we have photo ID, but those aren't my number one. My number one for sure is public safety. It is out of control because I work with the police. I went to the parking lot for Lunds in Edina. I saw what happened there. I saw how it's growing. The police are very concerned, and they're saying, will somebody help us? And this is in Minneapolis and St. Paul. This is in the suburbs. Less so where I'm from, frankly, in the Brainerd area. But if we don't get a handle on this, nobody's coming to Minneapolis and St. Paul. The revenues are not going to come in. Our state's not going to prosper. When you hear a kid playing in the backyard, jumping on a trampoline, minding her own business, shot and killed, that's a problem. When you hear about a kid in the back seat of a car eating a McDonald's, shot and killed, that's a problem. My apartment is in St. Paul. One block from there, gang shooting in a bar, 15 or 16 people shot, one killed, that's a problem. And if we don't get a handle on that, nothing else is going to be under control. If we cannot control lawlessness. So that's what I wake up at night about. That's what I pray. God, help us. We need wisdom here.
Jensen.
Since day one, that I would wake up every morning as your governor dedicated to a more free and more prosperous Minnesota. That's not a talking point. It is what drives me every single day. How do we become more free and more prosperous? Public safety. People who aren't safe can't prosper. We take our education system, and instead of it being about unions and Tim Walz's cronies telling you how to raise your kids, it's about you and your children partnering with teachers so that your children can prosper and become great Minnesotans. It's about an opportunity economy, tax cuts, reducing regulations, cheerleading people who start businesses instead of chasing them out. There are many other states that will welcome your talented children. Utah, Austin, Texas, the Carolinas. There are states all over this nation who welcome our retirees when we keep taxing their retirement. Arizona, Texas, Florida. We're competing to be global leaders. That is my vision for Minnesota. It's going to take safety and education and a smaller government that gets out of your way and champions the greatness that is the people of this state.
Murphy.
Law and order, education, tax reform, opening up mining. The list is long. They all sound great. But we're going to get that done right away. What I'm going to do, and I'm going to go to bed and wake up every day making sure is done, is government accountability. Making sure that you, the people of this great state, can trust your local elected leaders again. Making sure that we don't have tyranny again in this state. We're going to have term limits, so we don't have career politicians elected to office anymore. We need to give different people chances and opportunities to get involved and create change at the elected level. That's what we need done in this state. We need to make sure that you feel comfortable trusting the people that you put in these positions of power to make sure that your tax dollars are being spent correctly. There is no crime and corruption going on inside our governments. We don't have bloated spending bills. We don't end up with $7.1 billion plus another $3 billion coming in from the state or from the federal level. That tyrant Tim Walz and the radical left have already spent that money. That money belongs back to you, the people. That's how we thrive and survive, is knowing that our elected leaders can be trusted, and I want transparency, and I want integrity, and I will call out every corrupt politician and every crony that is elected to office that is doing you, the people, wrong. Senator Benson and Senator Gazelka are retiring from the Senate. Well, guess what? They've been there long enough now to collect that pension, so it doesn't matter to them anymore, ladies and gentlemen.
Mayor Murphy will stay with you for the moment. Many people in our audience tonight, here and on the radio and online, are people of faith for whom faith is an integral part of their lives and an important factor they consider in choosing candidates to support. If elected governor, what role will faith play in your leadership?
Faith will guide me every day. Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. That's what this country is founded on. We have to recognize that the principles of religion teach faith, family, and freedom, right? Those are our core principles in this country. They guide me every day to do good, to try to wake up and do right by everybody, to not commit a crime or steal or rob from somebody. And we need to remind people of that. And we've taken religion at every level out of the classroom. And not every religion is bad. And it's okay to practice that. There is no separation of church and state, by the way. I don't know if most people don't know that. It doesn't exist in our Constitution. And we need to remind our children and our families that it's okay to teach faith, and it's going to guide me. And I'm going to make sure, I'm trying to phrase this the right way, I apologize. I'm going to make sure that our future generations know what our country was founded on. And that's why people came from Europe, and that's why people came from other countries to come here for freedom in faith. I'm sorry, I'm fumbling over this question, and I don't mean to. It's important that you're allowed to practice your religion at any level that you want to. That's what our Constitution says. But at the end of the day, we all have to treat each other like good stewards and good neighbors and respect one another's religions, and I will never let anybody forget that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Jensen, what role will faith play in your leadership?
A few hours ago, I gave a woman a hug. Her husband died last week, and her son died the week before. Esther 4:14. Have you considered you're in the position you're in for such a time as this? Those are the words that drove my wife and I to say we're going to run. Hebrews 4:14 says, hold fast to the beliefs you profess. Faith will drive everything I do for the remainder of my life. It's part of the reason I went into the seminary. But I think people are looking at their leaders, hoping that our faith is more than just a private matter, that our faith would drive our actions and our priorities. I think we can talk about public safety and how we want to do better for the cops. But I haven't heard any discussion about the cops being protected and their qualified immunity being protected, and that the statute of limitations won't be thrown out. But they want to have faith in their leaders that those things won't happen. Because when those things happen, when qualified immunity and statute of limitations gets thrown out the door, we can have all the words we want about public safety, but you're not going to see more cops. They're hoping that they can have faith in their leaders. And we can go to the students, and we can go to the elderly, and we can virtually go to every segment of our society. And they're hoping that the faith that their leaders have will drive them to do the right thing for them. There's nothing more important than faith, I think, in a leader's life.
Thank you, Doctor. Senator Gazelka.
Thank you. The two things you're not supposed to talk about are religion and politics. And what do I always talk about? Religion and politics. So you have to learn from that. No, it's a really important part of my life. It affects everything I do. When I became leader, I placed my hand on the Bible when we were sworn in to Micah 6:8, which is, this is what the Lord requires of you, to do good, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before him. And that it was more for me that I did it. But I want to share that with you guys because it's an important part of my life. My whole life, I never thought I was going to be in politics. I thought I was going to be in ministry. My wife and I were youth pastors when we were in our 20s, and I was a big brother to somebody that's now married, 4 kids, and living a good life. In our 30s, we did 7 years of marriage ministry. I was a leader of a Christian school board. This last 15 years or so, we've been volunteers at Teen Challenge. So no matter what season in your life, I think your faith should be expressed by what you do. But some people have said, well, how can you do that? How can you be a Christian and be in politics? Aren't they supposed to be separate? And that's the very thing that makes me the person that I am, that I treat people the way I want to be treated, that I'll forgive somebody that maybe didn't deserve to be forgiven, that I always tell the truth. I mean, those are core principles that my faith challenges me to be higher and higher and higher in my character. And so it will affect everything I do, but I also acknowledge that people have the right to believe whatever they want to believe or not believe. That's the greatness of America.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Benson.
Our country was founded by people who were fleeing religious oppression and economic oppression. The two go hand in hand in building the greatness of our country, because people in a relationship with God become all that they're supposed to be. So we need to make sure that government stays out of the way of your relationship with God, that it respects that relationship, which is why school choice is so important to so many families. But for me, as a mom, I had two missions: souls to heaven and contributing members of society. And then as Health and Human Services Chair, to see the dignity of every Minnesotan, regardless of their ability, disability, poverty, or wealth, that I would see their dignity and treat them with that respect. And then, here's the hard part, to do the same with my colleagues. No matter what name they called me, no matter how horrible they said I was, no matter what terrible thing they accused me of, to have grace and mercy and treat them with dignity. How does that form you as a governor? It keeps you from walling off people when you need to have a discussion. Minnesota's a big state and a lot of lives, and everybody is different. But if you see them first with dignity, you can hear their voice and represent them well.
Thank you, Senator. Dr. Shah.
I'm a flawed and imperfect person, and I do my best to try to follow the example of Jesus Christ every day. And every day, I hope to do better than the day before. Religious freedom is a bedrock, founding, sacrosanct principle in this country, and it must be defended. What happens if you don't have faith? Let's explore that for a second. You worship Anthony Fauci. You really do. You do. You make science a vessel of faith. Science is good for many things, but it can't tell us why we're here and who made us. And if we choose someone who doesn't have faith that there is something greater than this world, then we will continue to go down this road to hell. We will continue to not believe in anything greater than the material possessions around us. We will continue to constrain the choices of others, and we will not live up to the character of Jesus Christ. So faith is incredibly important, and without it, something else will fill the void. And that's why it's so essential that when times get tough, we have the ability to share our faith with other people. We can never again have a situation where you're forced out of your houses of worship simply to placate a tyrant. As your governor, I will do my best to improve every day and live up to the example of Jesus Christ.
Dr. Kyle.
Yes or no, would you support and sign a bill to allow permitless constitutional carry for all Minnesota adults ages 18 and above? If so, why or why not? Beginning with Senator Gazelka.
Yes, I would. I've always defended the Second Amendment. That's why I had this conversation earlier with Scott Jensen about where we differed, because this is really, really important. And there are times that there's a lot of pressure to not defend the Second Amendment, but I think it's an incredible, valuable gift, the First and Second Amendments that we have, and it's worth fighting for. And so as governor, if they sent me Stand Your Ground, if they sent anything related to that I would support that. I think it's just an important gift that we have. So there are times that sometimes people want to change it. That's what happened in 2018. And the question is, are you willing to stand? And what we did, and Senator Jensen brought this up, I didn't want to have a hearing. I didn't want to change universal background checks. That's the role of the leader, is to stop something that you know is bad for the direction we're going, and there was tremendous pressure to change. So I delayed that out and then sent that bill 2 years later up to Hibbing, Minnesota, because Hibbing, Minnesota is full of wonderful moderate to conservative Democrats who happen to love the Second Amendment. And we let the Democrats from Minneapolis and St. Paul present their wonderful bills to Hibbing, Minnesota. And I'll tell you, they shouted them down. So I will always protect the Second Amendment. I've been endorsed by the NRA, not for this race, but in all my other races. It's an important principle that we have to protect. Thank you.
Dr. Jensen, would you sign a bill to allow permitless constitutional carry?
In a heartbeat, I would sign that bill. I think that there's different kinds of leaders. You have your aggressors, you have your avoiders, you have your achievers. I understand that Senator Gazelka wanted to avoid this, but I think we need to achieve something, and I think that we had both the House and the Senate, the Republicans, in 2017-18. We didn't get anything done. I think we should have. Honestly, I think I think, it's Freudian, I know he will. I think Senator Gazelka sort of said that the hearing he held in Hibbing was a sham. He said it himself. He said, I took it up there, sort of out of the limelight. I put it where it's a stacked deck. That's not leading. Leading is having the hard conversation. Leading is asking, why are prohibited people who have been involuntarily committed to a psych hospital able to buy guns? Why is this not working? That's what happened with my brother when he bought a gun and he had schizophrenia and had been involuntarily committed to a hospital. That's what happened to a patient of mine who he was able to buy guns and he shouldn't have been able to. I don't think there's anything wrong with having those hard, courageous conversations. And then, at the end of the day, do exactly what President Trump did. He had the gun control people in his office, in the Oval Office, and then he had the gun rights people. And when he got done, he said, there is no reason to change anything. This isn't about the Second Amendment. It's about the mentally ill. We have to stand strong for Second Amendment rights. And I have learned much. And the answer is yes. Constitutional carry. I'd sign it yesterday.
Dr. Shah, would you sign such a bill?
Absolutely. Without the Second Amendment, there's nothing else. You'll end up in an internment camp in Australia. Look at them. They gave up all their guns. Is that where you want to live? We know how camps end up. It's not good. And that's why our founders put the Second Amendment into the Constitution. I don't just talk about it, and I'm not going to have control like Senator Gazelka did and fail to move that football. I live it every day. I carry a Glock 43 with a +2 base pad loaded with 124 grain jacketed hollow points. It's a great gun. And when I go into Minneapolis, it's a full-size Glock because, Minneapolis. The only conversation that I'm willing to have on guns is what's the best round, and we all know it's 300 blackout out of an AR, 9mm out of a pistol. This is the kind of leadership that we need. We've reached a time where our streets have become so unsafe that the people buying guns now, all the NICS checks, first-time gun owner, it's not me on AR number 15, it's a black single mom who wants to keep herself safe. Because when seconds count, the police are minutes away. We need to empower her to defend her kids. We need to empower business owners to defend their businesses. We can no longer view the Second Amendment as a second-class right. It is the fundamental God-given right of everybody in this state and in this country to defend themselves, their families, and their businesses. Heck yes, I will get stand your ground across the finish line. I will sign it, and I will continue to carry my Glock when I serve as your governor.
Senator Benson.
Sign constitutional carry when the legislature sends it to me, because you have a right to defend yourself. Your very life depends on it. And as Dr. Shah said, women have a disadvantage when it comes to a fight. So let's make sure they have the advantage of being able to defend themselves. And then, when we can appropriately defend ourselves, let's go after the bad guys who are giving guns a bad name. Let's make sure that prosecutors can't waive firearm possession in the commission of a felony. Let's raise that so that if you're in possession of a firearm when you commit a felony, you get a higher charge. You don't get one waived. How about if you're a straw buyer, instead of it being a gross misdemeanor, it's a felony, $10,000 fine. Let's see if Prosecutor Freeman decides to waive, oh, that's right, he's not going to be there. Let's see if whoever's elected after him decides to waive those charges. Let's make sure that the good people of this state can defend themselves and the bad guys who give guns a bad name go to jail.
Mayor Murphy. Yeah, I would have signed it yesterday. That's why I made my city a Second Amendment sanctuary city. And I'm proud to do that. And I've already been endorsed and have the rating of A+ from the Gun Owners Association. The truth is, gun laws are not working. We have thousands and thousands of gun laws on the books, but they're only to regulate you, the law-abiding people of this great state.
The criminals are not going to follow those laws. That's why we have shootings that took place in St. Paul at the truck stop. That criminal acknowledged that he wasn't legally able to have a gun, but he went and committed that crime anyways. We need to make sure that these gun crimes are actually having stronger penalties and imprisonments. That's what needs to be done. And we will have stand your ground because people need to have the right to protect themselves from criminals that are doing them harm. And to coin a phrase real quick by Jensen, I want to circle back to the faith question. I'm going to do it here in 35 seconds. Recently, it was actually 3 weeks yesterday, I lost my mom to cancer. And I'm not looking for sympathy or anything, but I'm having a hard time with that question of faith because I asked Jesus and I asked God, to help me with a lot of questions that I have that went unanswered. So I'm struggling with that a little bit right now. But I still believe in that, and I still believe in our faith, and I still believe in our Creator and our God. It's just I'm a little angry about that right now. So I had a little bit of a difficult time answering that question. But at the end of the day, this country is founded on greatness, and religion should never be infringed upon.
Senator Benson, I'll begin with you. Like most journalists inside the Beltway, I have absolutely no idea what farmers in Minnesota are worried about, but you people should. Senator Benson, what is on the mind of Minnesota farmers, and what will you do about it?
They're worried about their land being taken away by things like buffers. They're worried, amen. They are worried that after they've gone through all the permits they need to build a dairy, that the county is going to say, no, guess not. You did all the paperwork, you filed everything, you paid every fee. I guess some county commissioners can just pull the rug out from under you after you've borrowed $1 million to build a barn. Do you know Wisconsin beats us in dairy production? Do you know California, Texas? Do you know South Dakota beats us in dairy production? It's because we make it really hard to farm in Minnesota. We have some of the best land in the entire world, and we make it hard. And we threaten to take their land. And we tell them how to keep their fields clean of weeds. We're not going to let you put on pesticides and fertilizers. Farmers aren't dumb. They don't put on more than they need. They don't make more trips over the field than they need. They do not need someone in St. Paul telling them what to do or how to do it. They're going to follow the rules. They're going to be good stewards of the land so they can pass it on to their kids. Farmers are worried about big government regulation pulling the rug out from under their dream.
Mayor Murphy.
Farming is necessary. We need that for our survival, right? We got to eat. And we're spending entirely too much time importing our food from other countries. Or we're sending our beef out to China to get processed and then brought back again. That makes absolutely no sense. We need to deregulate the farming industry. I'm for removing all taxes on our farmers, and if you want to pay tax for that stuff, it can be done in the grocery store. I know we don't have food tax in this state, but our farmers shouldn't be taxed to oblivion to make and create our food for us. We have to make it easier for farmers to farm again. And by the way, I'm not for tax increases. I'm against taxes on the family farms in this country. In our state, we have a lot of corporate farms in this state as well that are great. They're good. But at the end of the day, they end up passing the buck on to us anyways in the supermarket. We have to change that. We have to change the mentality around the taxation on our farmers. We need to incentivize our farmers to use high quality tech and less pesticides and greater science behind the farming. Our farmers have been doing this for generations. They're experts. It's passed down from family member to family member, and we have to get government out of the way of farming in this state.
Dr. Jensen, what matters most to Minnesota's farmers?
You're talking to a kid from Sleepy Eye, Minnesota. Farmers want to be appreciated. People don't realize how huge an impact agriculture has on the Minnesota economy. Government has been a terribly fickle partner for farmers. They don't know when to trust them and when not to. Farmers have come to resent what political leadership looks like. It looks like omnibus bills. It looks like late night 11th hour shenanigans. It looks like an excessive devotion to seniority. It looks like secrecy. It looks like backroom deals like what happened in the lockdowns, where the first lockdown you couldn't get a haircut, but the second one you could. Where was the science for that? That's what farmers are frustrated about. They're frustrated about the fact that succession planning for the family farm has had no assistance. They're frustrated with buffer zones are nothing more or less than property theft. You have to buy the land. You have to pay property tax on every year. And yet you can't have it in production. And you don't get any kind of a property tax credit. They're sick and tired of that. They're tired of the fact that energy is not considered in a real fashion because farmers need a reliable source of energy. Farmers are also very concerned about the opportunities that exist within the agricultural industry. And the fact is that young people aren't being told that there's tremendous opportunity to go into ag. You can go into finance, sales, banking, all kinds of things. The connectivity in terms of a robust broadband. There are kids in greater Minnesota that couldn't possibly do distance learning. And farmers want to know, where are we going to go from here? How are we going to get our legislatures to really step up and do something for agriculture?
Senator Gazelka, Farmers.
Thank you. I had the privilege of starting my insurance agency out in western Minnesota, Madison, Minnesota, an hour west of Wilmer, and love the farm life, frankly. But they would never let me use the combine, so I don't know about that. But anyway, I want to say they look at taxation. We needed to get them Section 179 so they could deduct their equipment. We didn't get it done right away. Democrats stopped it. This year they wanted PPP, that was the Paycheck Protection Program for the employees they paid. We passed it in March. Democrats wouldn't do it till July. But the bigger issue has to do with regulations. They are scared to death of people like the MPCA or the DNR shutting everything down, whether it's their borders, whether it's the water. MPCA this year, they said, look, we're not going to let you spread manure on the fields late into the fall. And a lot of the farmers that are livestock farmers need to do that. And so this particular MPC commissioner, we finally said that was strike 4. The first one was the California electric car mandates. Then she sued the taconite industry up north. Then she wouldn't let people do their wastewater infrastructure development in these small towns. And finally, she wouldn't let farmers spread manure on the fields. And so that's how that third commissioner basically lost her job. But farmers are the lifeblood of what we do. If you've never been out on a farm and enjoyed what they do and how they do it, they are such a blessing to what we do. And I represent 3 out of my 4 counties are ag. I love them.
Dr. Shah.
I'm not going to stand up here and lie to you that I know about farming. I'm not a career politician. I don't do pandering. And I can barely keep a tomato plant alive. But I do own a small business. And I can tell you that in my conversations with farmers, we have a lot of the same problems. We have a regulatory environment that tells farmers how best to run their business, how to manage their land. Who do you think cares more about the water, the person drinking it who lives there, or some unelected bureaucrat in St. Paul? I'm pretty sure the farmer knows how to take care of his or her land. And what are we doing to reduce input prices? Are we taxing diesel, or are we making sure that it can get here safely through new updated pipelines? What are we doing to reduce their energy costs? What are we doing to get the government out of their hair so they can succeed? And when they've been successful, running a successful business their entire life, how do they pass it on to their kids? We get one final life in them with the death tax. And it doesn't just affect them, it affects anyone who started a successful business in this state, and it absolutely has to go. As your governor, I will ensure that the death tax dies an unceremonial death and allows business owners of all shapes and sizes to pass on their life's work to the next generation.
Last question will go to John, and thank you for your patience and your response to this tonight, John.
27 states have passed right-to-work laws which guarantee that no individual can be forced to join or pay dues or fees to a labor union. What would you do to make Minnesota a free and competitive state for workers, starting with Senator Gazelka?
So for the public sector, I support right to work, that they don't have to join a union. For the private sector, the blue-collar unions, I made a decision not to support right to work because we need blue-collar union folks with us on the Republican side. That is how we won Cloquet, Minnesota. That is how we won Austin, Minnesota. Without either one of those, Democrats would have had complete control of all of Minnesota. Think about that. Think about all the tax increases and all the regulations that would have happened had we not built a bridge with blue-collar unions. That's why I was the first Republican that they led up onto a mining union group town hall within the last couple of weeks to just talk about how do we help mining. Well, the number one issue they care about is their jobs, that they protect their jobs. And so public sector, yes. Private sector, no.
Thank you, Senator. Dr. Shah.
I believe you have the right to join a union, and I believe you have the right to not join a union. And that makes you believe in the right to work. In this state, we can get arguing about whether or not you support unions, yes and no. And I had a discussion with a steelworker when I visited a mine in northern Minnesota. I said, well, is there a mine up here that employs non-union personnel? Yes. Are their wages somewhat similar to yours? Yeah, they're pretty close. I said, okay. So you and I can sit here all day and yell at each other about plus minus 10%. But I will tell you what, who's going to greenlight a new mine for you? Who's going to make sure that you have a job, period? Because we can sit each other and beat each other up as a pro right-to-work guy or not, but if you don't have a mine, if you don't have a job, if this is not a favorable business environment, your income will be zero. And then it will not matter about this conversation we have about right to work. So again, I support the right of people to unionize, and I support the people that have a right to choose not to do that. But the fundamental discussion ought to be around creating an environment that brings business builders into this state, keeps them here, and does not put false environmental roadblocks in the way, for example, of mining.
Dr. Jensen.
Interesting. I spent 45 minutes over the noon hour talking to a couple of folks who own a business, and they own a union shop, and it's in carpet installing. And I asked them about this question, right to work. I said, where do you think this should be in terms of the discussion? And they said, we don't want that to be the discussion. We want the discussion to be on an economy that's sizzling. We want good paying jobs, and we want government to get out of our way and to make certain that the regulations that they're putting on us are fair. When it comes to the work comp insurance issue, the unemployment issue, those are the things they want. So what they're telling me is they want a right to fairness, and I think that makes sense. I want to just comment, since this is the last question, I want to comment on a critical mistake that was made over the last 8 months. We should not have given Governor Walz his budget. When we did that, we gave him everything he needed from the legislature, and he has demonstrated in his unwillingness to come back and give the people who were supposed to get some sort of, if you will, hero pay. He has made it very clear. He is going to play hardball, and he's going to play hardball all through the next session. We are in a war. We are in a spiritual war for the spirit of America. And the reason I stand before you tonight is because I want to energize conservatives all over Minnesota. I want to expand the tent. I want to absolutely make certain that suburban women and moms and dads and parents know that we're going to be there. And the same with the minorities, and the same with the Gen Zs and the millennials. We need the millennials to join us at the table. That's why I stand before you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Mayor Murphy.
I'm with, it's hard. I'm kind of with everybody on this one. But look, unions have caused a lot of corruption, especially our public sector unions. There's way too much power and control over us and say in our daily lives, and that needs to get honed in. Unions are a good resource. Amazon really, really needs to unionize. Look at what they're doing to their employees. They're treating them like trash and taking advantage of their pay. But that's up to them if they want to do that. It should be open and decided by the people and by the workers if they have enough staff to unionize or not. It shouldn't be mandated. It shouldn't be forced upon anybody. But at the end of the day, we need to figure out and get to the root cause, which is, why do we have corruption? Why do they have so much control and power? And we need to focus on doing things that make sense for business owners so we don't have these daily questions of why are my taxes so high? Why did my unemployment insurance get raised today as a business owner? I'm mad about that. And I know a lot of business owners in this room are mad about this today too, that your unemployment insurance went up by double digits today. That should have never happened. That should have stopped in special session. It's all of these ancillary things that keep occurring that make it difficult for businesses to operate and for unions to continue to function when they're asking for more and businesses are being choked to death by government. And that needs to come to an end. There should be harmony with unions and there should be harmony with businesses at the same time.
Thank you. Senator Benson.
Public employee unions should be subject to right to work. You should not be compelled, if you want to work for the government, that you have to join a union. Private sector unions, as long as they compete, I'd leave them alone, with the understanding that there are some businesses who earn the unions they've got. Let's look at a little history. Look at the way unions came to be in the automotive industry. But once they're in, you can't get rid of them. In the public sector, FDR was even opposed to unionization of public employees. But let's look deeper at the core. Minnesota needs to be competitive for business. So as Mayor Murphy pointed out, the surplus should be used to keep our unemployment insurance under control. It should be used to promote business growth. So whether you are in a union or not, Minnesota is a place where you can be successful in your career.
Please join me in thanking the candidates for their answers this evening. Please remember as well that you can vote in the straw poll by using your smartphone camera to pass it over. If you do not have a ballot, and there will only be one, the device will only allow you to register at one, put your hand up and someone will bring you a ballot. Helpful people from Minnesota Family Council. Please join me in thanking Kyle and John as well. It's been an honor to be with you this evening. Safe travel on your way home.
We will allow 5 minutes for voting with the QR code in your phone. If you do not have a phone or for some reason cannot vote digitally, please let one of the volunteers know so that they can give you a paper ballot.
Probate battles, legal fees, or family conflicts. Estate planning can spare your loved ones these ordeals after you're gone. Contact the experienced team of Twin Cities lawyers at Morris Law Group. Morris Law Group will carefully walk you through the estate planning process to ensure your final wishes are carried out. Estate planning is like a jigsaw puzzle, from wills and probate, estate tax and guardianship, to conservatorship and power of attorney. Morris Law Group helps you put all the pieces together. No matter your age, no matter the size of your worldly possessions, protecting your family's future is important. Trust the like-minded professionals at Morris Law Group. They'll help you protect your holdings and your family long after you're gone. Morris Law Group, providing peace of mind and family assurance since 1976. Visit them at mlgestateplan.com. That's mlgestateplan.com. Start making your plans today at mlgestateplan.com.
Too long have conservative voices been silenced by the left when it comes to important conversations about energy. The Minnesota Conservative Energy Forum stands strong with other conservative leaders that are fighting for our energy security. Renewable energy will help strengthen our energy grids and our independence by generating more energy here at home. America should be self-reliant when it comes to energy. Clean energy made at home is the answer for a stronger grid and a more competitive, more secure Minnesota. At the Minnesota Conservative Energy Forum,
I've got you in queue.
Of energy approach is the right way to lower prices for consumers, strengthen our energy grids, and support our national security interests. Follow them on Twitter at MN Energy Forum and on Facebook at Minnesota CEF. The Minnesota Conservative Energy Forum is a 501c3
So as soon as you hear the
to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit mncef.com. That's mncef.com. Paid for by the Minnesota Conservative Energy Forum.
Need 1 minute. 1 minute.
You got 1 minute.
High pressure sales calls? I get it. What if I told you you could get competitive quotes from 3 contractors after one short meeting with me on any window brand? And it's all free. Visit My 3 Quotes online. That's My 3 Quotes.
Hey, it's Lee Michaels here for the Minnesota Horse and Hunt Club in Prior Lake. The Horse and Hunt Club is one of the premier sporting facilities in the world, and it's open to the public. This place is simply awesome. There are 5 different sporting clay courses that provide 30 different shooting scenarios. Memberships are available as well. You can hunt pheasants, turkey, partridge, ducks, and more. And don't forget to stop by Triggers for lunch or dinner. Maybe try some of their delicious bacon-wrapped pheasant bites. For pricing and details, visit horseandhunt.com.
Sightseeing in Paris, at the mall in Bloomington, or on horseback in Dallas.
All right, stand by.
Listen to AM 1280, The Patriot, at Odyssey.com or with the free Odyssey app.
All right, Mike's hot.
Welcome back, Twin Cities and World. AM 1280, The Patriot, the Northern Alliance Radio Network. Jack Tomczak, myself, Mitch Berg, live at Providence Academy. As we begin the post-game wrap-up, if you will, for the Minnesota Leadership Forum, forum with the gubernatorial debate, basically. Jack Tomczak, it started off, I think, like pretty much all the forums I've been involved in so far. I mean, I was starting to just trying to get some of the basic lines these people have down for the first probably, I don't know, half of the debate. It was all kind of stuff I've heard before. And then things started to get a little sporty up there on stage.
We're seeing the jockeying happen in real time.
Yes.
I think most noticeably was Dr. Shah.
Yes.
Took some very obvious shots at Senator Gazelka.
Yeah, I mean, he's battling his way back from what's generally perceived to be fifth place, for what that's worth at this point. And he had I've seen a bunch of social media so far saying, yeah, they're calling Shah the winner so far, Dr. Shah. He was smooth, he was on point, he was articulate, he did a great job of reading the room, I thought.
Yep.
And he knows he's got nothing to lose by punching up, and that's certainly what he spent the evening doing.
I talked to one of the handful of people in politics that I will admit out loud knows more about it than I do. A friend of mine that I worked with 20 years ago in the Graham's campaign.
Okay.
And I said, hey, who do you think won? He was like, Shah. And
Yeah.
I said, why? He's like, well, because I didn't know him.
Yeah.
So for people who didn't know Neil Shah before this, and this is their introduction, he's just some unknown, some fifth place, whatever.
Yeah.
He did great. He didn't have to do great to make an impression, but he did really well.
Yeah, and I thought, a couple of things I think we were talking about during the debate is Michelle Benson. I've known Michelle Benson for years. She's got one of the more conservative records in the legislature at this point, which certainly speaks to me. But she could, I think it's fair to say she could use a little. I think you were saying she could use a little bit of that Tom Emmer vibe in her.
Yep. Senator Benson, and I've told this to her, and she knows this, so I'm not. This is not going to be news to her. But she is. I don't know. She needs a little. It's a very serious job she's running for, and she treats it as such, and it comes off as maybe she needs to relax a little bit.
Relax a little bit. Maybe spend some time with a.
See, she's relaxed right now. Look at her. She's very relaxed right now.
That's right.
See, and she's smiling and she's friendly. Yeah.
And she's making the Bronx cheer at us here now. What do we do to deserve that? We're at the table next over from the Benson table here at Providence Academy.
But on stage, maybe a little too buttoned up. Now, a qualifier on that.
Yes.
Plug your ears, Michelle.
I'm sorry, we're having a little back and forth with Senator Benson here.
Okay.
One of the 5 candidates who's up on stage tonight. So just carry on, Jack Thompson.
She's had a personal tragedy recently.
Okay.
And that is going to affect anybody.
Well, I gave him one
fair
minute
point.
a couple days ago.
Fair point. That's exactly right.
30 seconds.
So if you mixed Mike Murphy and Michelle Benson together, because that guy
reminds me of
somebody
Chris
else vote on
Christie
you?
without the moderate politics. I mean, in all the good ways.
Absolutely.
That's right.
He's the problem that politicians often have is that they don't appear to be normal people.
Right.
And Mike Murphy seems like a normal guy, and a guy you can talk to, and a guy who's going to understand the problems that real people face, because he's a real person. I thought he did great as well.
Yeah, no, he did very well, generally speaking. I think on the question.